welcome to the next step in the 67 steps, the 67 frameworks, the principles, the guidelines to get you whatever it is your end game goal is here. Okay? For some of you, it's wealth, health, love, happiness, all those big picture, big pillars of life, I call them. So, today, I call this one My Poor Friends and Cameron Diaz's parrot. So let me, I say it's the difference between how rich and poor people assimilate knowledge. So my poor friends and my rich friends and Cameron Diaz's knowledge. So, some of you have probably heard of that book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. It's built kind of a cool educational company out there. I've read some of his stuff, good stuff. And so, for me, I didn't grow up with a rich dad or a poor dad. Both of my dads didn't have money, right? So I don't have that story of Robert Kiyosaki. But there's something else that I've had that's very interesting. So over the years, as I've been an investor, businessman, expanding my social circle here in Hollywood and around the world, it's been interesting because the luckiest thing that came from me is the fact that I now have friendships with some of the most fascinating people in the world, whether they be Nobel Prize winners, whether they be, Pulitzer Prize winning authors, billionaires, and professional athletes, A-list actors, all this kind of thing. And so, as you've learned already, we've talked about this worth a damn factor, this awareness factor. We've talked about the changeability and the adaptability that it takes to thrive. And so this concept, we talk about mentors, of course, too. So this was all born out of that understanding. And I have poor friends, and I now have rich friends. So I didn't grow up rich. Many of my friends, I don't judge my friends. I like old friends. Many of my old friends are, just middle class. Some of them are poor, and I don't get rid of them. I don't think like that. I like loyalty, and I like friendships. Money's not everything. But I'll tell you this, there's some people that I've made friends with over the years that I listen to on certain subjects a heck of a lot more. When it comes to business, I got some of my best friends that are not good with money. I don't ask them any business advice. I talk about static interference. You're going to learn about that later. It's like, even though they might be 50% right, I don't want to. How do I filter out the other 50%? That's wrong. So I want to play a hand of poker that's the best possible hand of poker. And that's listening to people who have done whatever it is you want. You want to get a six-pack? You want to make $1 million? You want to be married happily for 30 years? You better ask the right people, and the right people in that case, there's no right or wrong, so to speak, but there's people more likely to get you to a desired outcome. If your outcome is money in your bank account, listen to the right people. So you understand that. So I want to take this to a further level, beyond just mentors. I want you to begin to tune in on the awareness factor. I want you to start to notice patterns for yourself. You're probably on my book of the day, where I read a book a day, World's Greatest Minds, or spend time around the world's greatest minds, and then I kind of accumulate that knowledge and write an email and send it out. For you, I want you to begin to do that. And I want you to do it around this framework of rich friends, poor friends. I want you to start noticing, like I noticed, how my rich friends think. And it's not just rich. Let's say it's music. My friends who've made it in the music industry, they're quote unquote rich in that industry. My friends who are poor in that industry. Body, athletic, health. My friends who are extremely healthy physically. And then I got my friends who are overweight. What are the differences? You must begin to tune in to those differences. And you must begin to make inferences yourself that you draw out. I talk about this. I don't know if you can see back there. I have In fact, starting at 16, I began to accumulate boxes of knowledge and information. This goes beyond mentors, because mentors, you're only going to have so many. But you can have a lot of poor people and a lot of rich people around you at a friendship level, acquaintance level, even at a stranger level. I want you to start noticing all the subtle differences. So let me just give you some examples here, okay? And I'll tell you why I call it Cameron Diaz's parrot. One of my neighbors, for a while, some different A-list actors. I won't say the exact name, even though I said Cameron Diaz, Katy Perry, Russell Brand. A lot of these people live around here. I just found out Leonardo DiCaprio lives near me. Paris Hilton was here. Ben Stiller almost ran me over. So, successful people in the sense of Hollywood successful. You might not agree with their success, but if you want to be an actor, they've done pretty well. So, one of my neighbors, one of these A-list actors, celebrities, to be unnamed, even though I put the name in the title, it's not necessary. I just put that as a title. But they had a parrot, and this parrot is insane. It drives me insane. Anyone in my house is like, what's that screeching noise? Parrot makes noise all day. You can hear it from far away, from another house into my house. And it's like, it never stops. Okay? And of course it was annoying. We went down there. We're like, can you stop the parrot? They're like, it's a $50,000 parrot. I'm like, I don't care. You can get rid of it. Send it in. It's obviously not happy. Send it back to its home. Well, that didn't work. Right? I still hear the parrot, although it's gotten a little better recently. So what's the relevance to this step? Well, Joel Salatin came out here the other day. So he's a rich person, not just rich in financially, because he is rich financially, but he's rich in changing the world, altruistic thing, happiness. Never seen a guy jump out of bed more excited than Joel. Just he's firing on all cylinders in his life. And he's my first mentor. And he was out here not too long ago here in Hollywood. He came to visit. He was on Joe Rogan's podcast, and then he was up going to Berkeley. If you've read Omnivore's Dilemma with Michael Pollan, he was in that book, and he was speaking, I think, at Berkeley or something. So when Joel was here, it reminded me. Talking to Joel, he is full of a lot of quotes. Like literally, if you have a 5-minute conversation with Joel Salatin, he's going to say 10 quotes. He's going to be like, well, like my dad used to say, make haste slowly. Oh, like my dad used to say, you don't try to teach a pig to fly because you can't do it and it bothers the pig. Or like Alan Nation used to say, blank. And he literally reminded me, not in a negative way, but the parrot was there. It's like the parrot, like Joel is like predictable speech patterns. And of course, as you're going to learn in another one of the 67 steps, speech, like Wittgenstein, the great philosopher, said, speech is a reflection of what's in your brain. So as the old parable goes, you can judge a tree by its fruit. So a tree that has oranges hanging down, you don't have to cut the tree open and do a DNA test. If it's got oranges coming down, it's an orange, right? I guess technically with grafting, it could be something else. But you get my point, right? So with Joel Salatin, he's one of my rich friends, my mentors, rich in life, rich in physical things, rich in money, rich in all ways. Happily married to his high school sweetheart. Son works and daughter there, working around near him. Grandkids, respect of the world. Everything you'd want, Joel has. And I think there's a correlation between the speech patterns that he does, the way that he's quoting. That's because A, the way he quotes shows humility. He doesn't say, I have all the answers. So he's one of my rich friends, and he's different. And whenever I'm around my poor friends, they're always just talking about their opinions. It was funny, not too long ago, I had these 3 guys come over. One was they were from out of the country. I won't say where they're from, right? I don't want to start a weird war of countries. I know a lot of people here listening from all over the world. But so these guys were in my jacuzzi, and they were not what I would consider people I would really listen to. They would be a bad bet. And they started talking about some politics, and they were actually in my jacuzzi and my pool. It's like 10 people over, and they were smoking cigars, and I just got out of the pool with my longtime friend, and I was telling him, I was like, can't handle being in there. because I know they're just spouting off their own opinions about all these complicated things that are hard to know. They were telling about politics and world peace and what the budget and the recession should be. And then I was thinking back, Joel Salatin, when I talked to this guy who's done everything right, in many, not everything, but many things right, it's like he's quoting other people. He doesn't just say, listen to me, Tai. But when I'm with these three guys that have never done anything of substance in life, except just live, right? Just like be another automaton in life. These guys are just full of opinions. And that's when it hit me. Rich friends, poor friends. The patterns emerge. Now, over the years, I've noticed hundreds of patterns. Okay, let me give you another one. Not too long ago, 3 or 4 years ago, in the morning I woke up and this girl that I know, she had just an acquaintance. She was on Facebook. She had posted on her wall, I'm starting this new company. It's going to be a company that helps people get personal assist. I'm gonna be a broker for personal assistants. You need a personal assistant, contact me. No. Well, earlier that week, I'd been talking to one of my buddies who's one of the pioneers of crowdsourcing. And he told me, he was like, this is a guy, by the way, who made like $100 million before he was 30. Really sharp person. He told me, he said, Tai, don't do businesses where you're in the service business. Try to turn it into a marketplace. So that was in my head, ringing around in my ears. And then this girl, I see her Facebook post, and just innocently, check my microphone here. Just innocently, I posted on her Facebook, hey, you should turn this business, instead of a service business, into a marketplace. And I left and I came back, and it was just, my Facebook had exploded. She had blocked, she had deleted my comment, private messaged me on Facebook. How dare you embarrass me in front of my friends, and just like railing on me. And I wrote her back. I was like, hey, I didn't mean it that way. I was literally just giving a tip I learned from a guy recently, one of my business partners, who's made, by the time he's younger than you, and has made incredible, $100 million. And she wrote back, when I need the help of a millionaire, I'll let you know, and blocked me. And of course, I didn't care. It's an acquaintance. I don't even know if I ever met this person. That was in the morning. This is true. The same day. That night, one of my buddies texted me. He said, hey, I'm in town from Denver, and I've got Chuck Liddell, who was the UFC fighting heavyweight champion of the world, I think, at the time. I've got him, and I've got George Karl. If you guys know if you follow NBA professional basketball, I'm a big basketball fan. And he actually, last year, he won the NBA Coach of the Year. So he's a Hall of Fame coach, one of the most winning coaches in professional basketball history, played pro basketball, went to Dean Smith, played with, coached Michael Jordan in the All-Star game, went to the NBA Finals when he was coaching. Just a top guy. He told me one time, he said, Tai, I've been in the playoffs since I was 14 years old, and he was 60 years old. He said, I've never missed the playoffs. He's been a winner his whole life. Well, I didn't know him at that time, and my friend said, do you mind if we stop by your house? I was like, sure, this is awesome. I love basketball. And sure enough, they knock on the door, and in comes Coach Karl. Everyone calls him Coach Karl. He has his sweatpants on. Nice guy. It was funny because I was trying to be cool. I was like, Coach Karl's here. So I was like, you want a drink? And I usually don't make drinks because I'm not a good bartender. And he's like, yeah, I'll have I don't know, scotch or gin and tonic or something. So I took the tonic, and I guess it had been bounced around on delivery to my house, and it literally blew up in my face. So that was my introduction to Coach Karl. Sitting there with exploded, looking like a fool. And anyway, got him a drink, and then I invited him. I was like, hey, you guys want to go to the W Hotel here in Hollywood? And at the time there was a restaurant. Said, let's go have a good steak. And some of them had to leave, but Coach Karl was there. I think he had a limo. So he's like, yeah, Tai, let's go have a drink. Let's go have dinner. So about 6 of us, my cousin Maya, me, Coach Karl, we get in that limo. I ride with him. And I said to him, Coach, I don't want to bug you because I know you like basketball. I know this is your job, basketball, but I love basketball, and I'd love to talk to you about it. But I don't want to bother you tonight. So just tell me, if I'm asking too many questions. And Coach Carl said to me, he was like, you know what, Ty? I love basketball. Let's talk basketball as much as you want. So I was like, awesome. So we talked about basketball on the drive there in the limo. We get to the W Hotel. We get up, and it's literally like 10 of us. But it was just me and him really were talking basketball. But here's the interesting part. Remember this girl in the morning who was didn't want to hear a word I had to say. Coach Carl says to me early on in the conversation, he's like, Ty, what's your opinion? Do you think, I forget what he said. Do you think Pau Gasol at the Lakers is good or whatever? He started asking me all these questions. Now, at first, I just thought he was asking me questions to be polite. But as the hours went on, I was like, this guy genuinely wants to know my opinion about pro basketball. Now, this is a guy who's probably made, I don't know exactly, but $50 to $100 million, literally, coaching basketball. He's been coaching basketball for 20 or 30 years. Do the math. These contracts that coaches get are $2 to $10 million, depending on the coach and the team. So you've been coaching 20, 30 years. And he was a pro basketball player himself. He's got a pretty penny in his pocket. And this girl, of course, on Facebook that morning had never started one successful business ever. I knew her. She'd always tried new businesses. Rich friends, Coach Carl, poor friends. What's the difference? Well, as the night progressed, I realized even though he was richer than anybody there and knew more about basketball, he was a question person. He liked to ask other people questions. Now, I know a good bit about pro basketball, and believe it or not, played at one of the biggest high schools in the U.S. in North Carolina when I was in high school, and been around basketball and some of my friends, and played college and even on to pro basketball. So it wasn't like I knew nothing about basketball, but obviously I don't know anything compared to this coach, So this coach was a rich person asking questions, and that's a pattern I've noticed. I've got another mentor now who's one of the top real estate people in the world, just made incredible amounts of money. I'm not sure if he's quite a billionaire, but pretty close to it. And it's fascinating to go out to dinner with him. He always has a genuine question, and he genuinely wants to ask smart people that he identifies in the group for knowledge. But my poor friends, like I said on Facebook, one little quote that I gave her, one little piece of advice, she took as an affront to her pride. Again, another pattern. I'm giving you some of mine. But remember, the 67 steps is not about me. I want you to begin to notice differences. If you can become, as Richard Dawkins says, the reason the human brain has adapted and been wired over the thousands of generations to work the way it works, is because we need to become self-learning machines, self-educating machines. So one of the ways is just constantly get in your head. Rich friends, poor friends. Six-pack friends, fat friends. Happy friends, unhappy friends. And you start drawing out patterns. You maybe need to write them down. I've written down over the years. I've got the Coach Carl story in my head. I've got the Joel Salatin. He's always saying quotes. Where my poor friends are never saying quotes. They're saying their own opinions. My poor friends are always mad when anybody offers criticism. My rich friends are always asking preemptively, you see, for it. Those are just two patterns. Now, I can go on, and I'm going to give you some more. But the point of this lesson is not for you to just memorize mine. It's a new way about perceiving the environment in which you find yourself. And that perception, that way of perceiving the environment, must become differences between the successful and the unsuccessful. Difference between the unhealthy and the healthy. I went, one of the Los Angeles Lakers, when they won the world championship, was Ron Artest, changed his name to Meta World Peace. Famous basketball player, crazy guy. And I got invited to his birthday party last year in November. So I'm there at his birthday party. And lots of people there, right? And people were drinking. It was at a place that served food, kind of like a bar, tavern kind of thing. And I looked around and saw what everyone was eating and everyone was drinking. Now, this is the off season. This isn't the off season. This is during the season. But This was on like not on a game night, right? So Ron Artest, it was a whatever, an off day, a Monday or something. It was a Monday, I remember now. Everybody there was eating fried chicken. They were drinking shots. And the birthday guy, Ron Artest, the Los Angeles Laker, he had a huge salad and maybe a little glass of wine and was drinking a lot of water. And I was thinking, is it causation or correlation? He could have partied. He's a young guy. These guys are ripped. They are in shape. They can drink and eat a few chicken wings. It's not going to affect them. But I realized right then and there, rich friends, successful friends, versus all those other people in that place just eating away with no discipline. And it was another mental note that I wrote for myself. It was another note. It's that Cameron Diaz-Parrott was like Joel Salatin. He's always parodying other people. George Karl's always asking questions. Ron Artest is always disciplined in how he eats and drinks, even though if anybody there was nobody there in better shape. I don't know if you've ever been around a professional athlete, but pro basketball player, these guys are machines. They have personal coaches and weight coaches. They can do the splits. They're flexible. They can freaking, bench press 300 pounds. They can run 10 miles. Their BPM probably on their heartbeat is like in the 50s. They're at 6%. Pat Riley from the Miami Heat, he makes the president there, he makes his players come in at 6% body fat. These guys are lean, mean machines. But yet, even on his birthday, Ron Artest was eating a salad and maybe a little bit of wine, but everything in moderation. See, that's why he is who he is. You begin to draw those same inferences. You begin to extrapolate out things in front of you. It takes a level of awareness. That's why we've talked about the worth the damn factor. Part of it is that awareness. I've learned many things. There was a person that I can't remember. Yeah, it was a girl I know, and she was saying, "Tai, I got this business idea, and I need like an investor, like 50 grand. Like, oh, okay, 50 grand. Well, she said, after like a month, I was like, nobody really wanted to do it. And she's like, well, all these millionaires. You've got money, these millionaires. Why don't they just give me 50 grand? Who cares? It's just 50 grand. Now, on the flip side, when I've been out to dinner with billionaires, most of them are fair, but not overly generous. Like, if they come with 2 people and you come with 2 people, they'll be like, let's split the check. So this poor person that was trying to raise money, their perception was like, oh, rich, just shell out the money. But yet, that's a poor person's perception. Okay? The rich people are not overly either way. They're kind of in between. They're not miserly, the good ones that I know. And they're not just throwing their money like you see, at a club in Vegas, people throwing money. Because they understand, they understand the capital value of money. They understand in marbles, they call it the TAW, T-A-W. You got to keep your TAW. That investment unit, that nugget, is there to spin off other cash. If you eat your own, it's like the old rap thing. It's like drug dealers shouldn't get high off your own supply because you need the supply to sell. Now, obviously, I'm not condoning drug dealing, but you get my point. There's a nut. There's a capital amount. There's a nest. Like if you're a squirrel, you got your nuts. You can't give them out willy-nilly, or the next thing you know, it's the death of a business, the death of a dream. So there's another thing that I learned. And I've been accumulating these over literally decades. But I didn't always accumulate them very efficiently. Why? Because no one ever told me these 67 steps. I only realized these, over the years later. So the second half the battle here, it's like Woody Allen says, half of success is just showing up. Well, half of your success right now is just understanding this, what I'm telling you right now. And simply by understanding it, it'll start becoming easier. All right? This should become easier for you over time. Just the perception. Literally, billions of people don't know what we just talked about. They see all people as equal, and in the sense of intrinsic value, sure, everybody's equal, okay? No life should be taken for another life. I understand this is not an ethical, conversation that we're having here. What I am saying, though, is the value of one set of opinions and advice for you towards moving you towards a goal, and you betting your life's moment by moment. Remember, every action you take is you betting a moment on your own opinion, on somebody else's opinion, on the media's opinion. Be careful with your bets, because in poker, the guy who makes, or the girl makes the best bets, the most statistically likely to happen, is the one who wins in the long run. You're in this for the long run. So I want you, and maybe you can start to think of some. What are some differences you've seen in the most successful people? And I'm talking get down nitty gritty. I'm talking about how you walk, how you talk, when you decide to be quiet or not quiet. Notice the differences. Which of my friends has an outcome that I want, and how do they react to every scenario? Because when you do this, it's like Abraham Lincoln said. I think he said, I never met somebody, a man or woman, that I didn't learn a lesson from. Said oftentimes it's what not to do. But see, Abraham Lincoln was a learning machine, and look at the impact he had on the world. Changed the nation, eradicated slavery in the United States, or, abolished slavery. So in that sense, if you want to be a person of impact, you can see there. He became a learning machine. He didn't let his ego get in the way. And that's what that one girl did versus Coach Carl, who, if anybody could have been cocky, would have been him. Why would he need to ask me about basketball advice? He literally is in the Hall of Fame for one of the most winning coaches in history. Won thousands of games. Not just 100, 1,000 plus. So in that same way, that's a pattern. Joel Salatin's quotes are patterns. Ron Artest's diet is a pattern. When I was at the Berkshire Hathaway meeting, that was interesting. So I'm there, Bill, it was funny, I walked to the front and I was standing right next to three men, Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, and Charlie Munger. Those three men, between the companies they own, I think Buffett and Munger own a $300 billion company, and whatever, Microsoft's valuation is similar or higher. You're talking people that almost have $1 trillion. Three people standing there. $1 trillion. They certainly qualify as rich friends, right? $1 trillion market cap. And as I listened to them talk, specifically Warren Buffett, I noticed some patterns. Like one of the people in the audience, there was a question and answer, tried to ask a question about the financial math of one of the investments that they had made in their investment company. And this guy was pretty sharp. You could tell he had prepared. He had it all written out. He got in front of 15,000 people on a microphone. He's like, Mr. Buffett, I have this question. And he went, the way you valued the company is this. And now remember, Warren Buffett's 84 years old. He's spring chicken. Warren Buffett stopped him. He said, you know what? That was good math. Let me stop you. Everything was right until you got into the intrinsic valuation of these stock options and blah, blah, blah. And he said, your math was 84 million minus this. And he literally was just decimated the guy. Not in mean-spirited, but the guy was like, just sat down. He spoke math, and he did math computations. You could see he was sitting there at a little desk. He didn't have a calculator. He just, out of his brain, math, financial math, was second nature to him. Rich friends, they know math. I tell my office, all my rich friends are good at math. I'm not saying math is good or bad. I'm not saying being rich is good or bad. That's a judgment call you make. You have your values. But I am saying this. It seems to be correlated and probably a causational factor that knowing math is something that rich people know. And if you ask your poor friends to do 10 times 72, they're like, something simple. They're lost. So again, I store it in the filing cabinet of my head. Rich friends, poor friends. Going back to your body, I've got a friend, Janelle. I had a big model shoot at my house for Guess, one of the top models in the world. She came and shot with one of the top photographers. And they use my house sometimes. And I met a guy there who was one of the models too. And now he's gone on to be one of the top male models in the world. He's in New York. And Janelle was there and we became friends. Him and his girlfriend and became friends. And he is in amazing shape, right? He gets paid. He got to take his shirt off, be in all these photo shoots. He's literally got just an 8-pack. No extra body fat, just healthy. And so he's rich in health in this sense. Well, I went to the movies. And I'm a sucker at movies. I eat pretty healthy. I'm in pretty good shape. But boy, candy gets me. Especially at movies. I have a weakness. But we'd all go to the movies. And it's like, Tai, you want to be in shape, friend, or out of shape, friend? And I started noticing this guy didn't order any snacks. This guy didn't this. I started going, when we go to restaurants, I'd watch how he eat. File it away in the brain. Tai, rich friends, poor friends. Because I'd go with some of my other friends. I remember one time, literally, was with Janelle. He didn't even have any food. And this other friend was eating this huge hot fudge sundae. You know, if your end game goal is to be ripped and be healthy, that sundae was the poor friend. Guy eating a big ice cream sundae. So again, filing away. You know, people ask me, Tai, why'd you spend 2.5 years with the Amish? Well, I didn't realize it at the time. There's many reasons. I never became Amish. You know, they're Christian and conservative in many ways. But, man, did I learn a lot about social life. Did I learn a lot about how to make friends and influence people. So one of the first Amish communities I lived at was in Virginia. And they had, at the time, about 100 families in a community. It's not a commune. They're capitalistic, but they buy farms relatively close because they use horses, so you don't want to live too far apart. And I was with this Sam Chupp guy. Stayed with him and his family. I had 6 kids and him and his wife. And man, I saw there, you know, I grew up in a family where there's a lot of divorce. And when it comes, if your rich goal is to have happily ever after marriage and kids, boy, Sam Chupp was it. I lived there 2.5 years and never once saw him and his wife argue. I saw them, I think, where he didn't like something, but he was very kind and nice on how he conveyed the message. And I hadn't grown up around that, right? Grew up around a lot of fighting, divorce, and not just my parents, but all my parents and grandparents. You know, it was all over the place. So if your end goal is happiness socially there or family, I had been around quote unquote poor people. And again, I began to notice, and I was like, okay, children, happiest kids I've ever seen were at the Amish. And you know, there's this whole controversy in the modern world. You see everybody's like divided. Modern society, it's like spank kids, don't spank kids. Be strict with kids, let them go on their own. But if you look at the end game result, most people's kids in the modern world are annoying as heck to be around. I don't know if you've ever been at the store. Somebody comes in with their spoiled brat kids that just rampaging the place and completely oblivious to life. What the Amish, first thing, if you ever went to an Amish community, you'd be like, they have the nicest, happiest kids you've ever seen. It's mind-blowing. And I saw, you know, you'd think, I was like, do the Amish spank their kids? Do they yell? Well, I noticed when the Amish have babies around the table, you know, 1-year-olds, they start training young. They don't hit. But yet occasionally, I think the average Amish kids maybe once or twice in their life has been spanked when they did something really bad. Like, I'm talking about in their life, once or twice. But when they were young, before they remembered it, when a little Amish kid, when they're supposed to be praying, like you pray before you eat dinner, right? The whole family's praying. The little kid, if it reaches out its hand, it grabs some food, the mom will very gently just like flick the finger. I'm talking so lightly that it's, the baby's not in pain, but the baby pulls his hand back, right? Just subtly pulls it back. No anger there. The kid's not even going to remember. It's that subtle training. And over the years, Amish kids behave at a table. 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, they don't even cry. I mean, when they get hurt, they cry. They're normal. But I realize, see, Amish are rich in understanding of the social dynamics that it takes to grow a community, family, a marriage. I'm not saying I'm an expert. I'm in the modern world with all the weird complications, but I'll never forget what I learned, and I stored in my head that if I want that outcome that they had, these are the rich people. The answer wasn't spanking all the time, and the answer wasn't never spanking. The answer was, like Aristotle, was this somewhere in the mean, in the average, and the real answer was training, right? It's like an animal. If you have a horse and you're hitting it all the time, you will literally ruin the horse. I used to train horses and dogs. You can't overdo it. They begin to get shy, and then they're not aggressive enough. So what you got to do is train. So again, that's not the point of this lesson. The point is how you must become an accumulation of lesson, wise and rich lesson machine, just like Abraham Lincoln would. Differentiating. You better discriminate between good ideas and bad ideas. It's funny. People are still racist. And I'm like, look, we know genetically that the only difference between black people and white people basically is freaking the amount of melanin in the skin, which of course is a physical difference, but the only difference is the length of time it takes you to absorb vitamin D. There is no substantive discrimination that can be done along ethnic lines. Not really. I mean, there's nothing there. It's a phantom, right? Martin Luther King Jr. was right. It's like racism is a joke. But I'll tell you where you should discriminate. It's not on the amount of melanin in people's skin. It's amount of horrible thoughts coming out of people's brain. The specter that will haunt you of stupidity and idiotic, let me just say stupidity, miswiring, man, that goes along all lines of race. It goes in every country I've been. I've been in 51 countries. There's literally a stratification of morons and intelligent people, of animal automatons and enlightened people that are at least moving towards a goal systematically. So I don't want you to discriminate in the traditional sense of what we talk about, race discrimination or gender or whatever, all that stuff. I stay all out of that political stuff. I feel like I'm too much of a mad scientist in my brain to even think that way. What I'm thinking about is I want to discriminate around dumb ideas. You have a dumb idea that's unsubstantial, that's unprovable, that's illogical. I want to discriminate against your brain signals. That's what I want to do. And that's what rich friend and poor friend is. It's you becoming an elitist around people worth listening to. You listen to anybody, man, woman, child, any race, any country, any religion who spouts off truth, or, as I like to say, not so black and white truth, ideas that are worth a damn. They might be wrong, they might be just hypotheses, but focus on that end game, man. End game. That's where you have to be. So, I am attuned, and I want you to become highly attuned to the concepts of rich friend, poor friend. I want you to come up with your own list. Part of the reason I'm so big on biographies is because the biographies is how you make friends with the imminent dead. As Charlie Munger says, what is imminent dead? It means people who are amazing but are no longer with us. The imminent dead are people that you can begin to pattern around. And just read the books of the rich people, of the healthy people, of Mother Teresa changing the world. People are like, Tai, why do you talk about the elite? I'm like, it's not the elite. It's the better bet to make in life. That's that simple. I hope you discriminate along the lines of good thought and what is probably inaccurate thought. It's not good. Let me try to get away from good. Accurate, likely to be accurate, and not likely to be accurate. Some of my friends that are poor, they're occasionally right. And I don't mean just poor in money, just poor in life satisfaction. They're sometimes right. Okay? That's going to be confusing. So one thing you need to be right, you need to be storing away is that sometimes people that don't have anything going on come up with good ideas. It's random. But for the most part, and for the bet you want to make, don't bank on it. Go with the more sure bet. In investing, there's a concept of alpha. What does that alpha mean? It means, it's like risk. It's like if you have a mutual fund manager or a hedge fund manager. He takes 100 units of risk. For every 100 units of risk, how much money does he bring back as a return on investment? So one guy might bring back more money, but he took 500 units of risk. So you have to adjust for that. right? If you took more risk and only made a little bit more money, it might be a worse adjustment. For every increment of risk you take, you need to get a concomitant, a justifiable amount of risk for every potential unit of return you get. Now, every day of your life, every moment of life, you're moving through time. We know this. Stephen Hawking speaks of it. We know there's no Benjamin Button. Time will not turn around. He used to think that, but Stephen Hawking says, no, time moves forward in his book, Theory of Everything. He says, thermodynamically, cosmologically, and psychologically, time's moving this way. So you're moving forward today. By the time you get to the end of this, you've already moved forward 60 minutes or however long it's going to be. Well, every one of those, you're going to place a bet. And my suggestion to you, the only logical choice, is to make those careful bets that are generally going to be right, although they could be wrong, and sometimes the worst bet. You know, if you're playing poker and you bet on a pair of twos, occasionally you win, but you win more by betting on aces. So George Carl's methodology of living, Joel Salatin's methodology of lots of quotes, I've adopted it. Because sure, maybe he's wrong, and maybe my friends, like I said, in the jacuzzi that just sat there, blah, 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 well, the solution to the crisis in the Middle East and the economic housing thing, they don't know anything. I'm not just talking. Bill Burr talks about that, the comedian. It's so funny. If you heard his last comedy tour, he's just like, man, when you get old, you just get full of crap. You're just, blah, blah, blah. But Joel Salatin's not like that. The older he gets, the more fascinating, because he's accumulated more quote. He's like the parrot. It's all you always want to hear, except he's like the parrot you want to hear, not the one that I had next to me. He's like, oh, this parrot. But it's always the same methodology. When Joel approaches a problem, he starts bringing back wisdom and quotes from other people. That's the origins of this book of the day and this whole concept that you know me for, and you know that I've become known for. It's not my own. I copied it from Joel. It's like Sam Walton said, it's made in America. He's like, everything I did, I copied from somebody else. Alan Nation, one of my mentors, said, Tai, I never had an original idea in my life. I just go to where smart people are, and I accumulate their knowledge. So these are all what you could call memes. So I want you to think of this word, memes. So if you read The Selfish Gene by Richard Dawkins, and some other people, I think Daniel Pink, various biologists and sociologists talk about this concept of memes. And memes are literally like genes, like DNA that you get from your mom and dad when you're born. You get these chromosomes, these genes that come down to you. And in the same way, your head the thought patterns of your brain are literally passed on through memes. So you and I have the chance. We don't have this chance biologically, because like what you're born with genetically is outside your control, right? You're going to be 50% of your mom's genes basically and 50% of your dad's. 25% of your grandma. I mean, you get 12.5% of your cousins. That's outside of your control. But the memes, those are the thought genes that are inside your head that work very much like regular genes in that they're passed on. They're just not passed on by blood relations. They're passed on through the media. They're passed on through the books you read, the people you associate with. Control those memes, those mental genes, i.e. memes. Mental genes are memes, ideas. You know, one of my goals in the world, in life, I always say you should have this, you're going to learn about this one sentence plan. My goal is to spread good ideas through mass media. That's what I do, or what I want to do. That's my aspiration for my life. And I'm saying I want to spread good memes, and well, by good, I don't mean like black and white 500-year-old archaic thinking of, you know, this is intrinsic. I mean good in the sense that they move civilization forward towards things that most people in civilization feel is the right path, right? There's a consensus, I think, about the things that are going to be good for society. And I want to spread ideas about those things, right? It's not good, bad in that moralistic sense. It's good, bad in an outcome sense. I want this outcome. I want civilization here. So I want to spread ideas that are mental genes that get into people's heads, just like, you know, when your mom and dad, when they slept together and had you, it's a mixing of your mom's genes and your dad's genes. In the same way, I want my ideas mixing into the milieu of the world's thoughts, especially media, because I feel that the media modern media here in Hollywood is guilty of spreading some ineffective mental genes. So for you, you're going to become, after understanding this concept, you're going to start becoming an observant person that assimilates and accumulates and takes the mental genes, the memes from the right people, right? That's your new framework. Look for the patterns. We're going to talk about this later, the Sherlock Holmes concept of making, if you don't know, Sherlock Holmes, the detective, it's a great book. I think I have it on my recommended book list. If you have never read the short stories of Sherlock Holmes, there's a couple series. It's some of the best fiction reading ever. And when you read it, one of the things, somebody walks in and Sherlock Holmes looks at someone's like, oh, I see that you had a fight with your wife today and you like bagels. And the guy's like, how do you know? He's like, well, you have a spot here and your wedding ring is off turned to the corner, so I know you're married because you have a wedding ring, yet it's turned to the corner. Maybe you hastily ran. Anyway, he's able to deduce all these things. That's what I want you to do when it comes to meeting people. I want you to break them down. I mean, I'm not talking about in a weird way. You don't even have to tell them. It's not like you have to ask them a million questions. Be an observant machine. Listening. I was reading, I think it was in J.W. Marriott Jr. Him and his father built the Marriott hotel chain, $12 billion company, and he says, you got to listen. And I think more than listening to words is observing. People, when you ask them something, oftentimes, this give you skewed answers. So better than listening to words, it's observing. Like I observed what Ron Artest never told me his diet, the Los Angeles Laker guy. I watched. So become more aware. That's why this goes back to that worth a damn factor. People who are worth a damn are literally aware of obvious things that other people have ignored. That must become you. Okay? And then in your journal, the 67 Steps journal, I want you to every day, maybe you don't get one. I don't get them every day, but every week I come up with some framework. I'm like, you can add to the 67 steps. Now, there's one thing we haven't talked about that's important. So you're going to write these down, begin to accumulate them over time, systematically. Remember, these you can pass on to your children, on to friends, you can teach other people. Now, beyond this, there is the question of that I get a lot. People are like, I don't have any rich friends. I don't have any successful people. Well, remember, as Munger says, competence is relative. Okay, so in a certain sense, you can always find somebody successful because there's somebody richer in mind, in spirit, in body, in relationships, in fulfillment, in money than other people you know. So there's already a stratification of your friends that's already happened that you don't have to force. And yes, the more you become an interesting person, and we're going to talk a lot about this in the 67 steps, the more you'll have this ability to reach people at higher levels. Just start where you are. I guarantee you in your own family, uncles, cousins, close friends, acquaintances, you'll have people who are in better shape than others. Begin to notice the subtle differences. Maybe one person always avoids, burgers. Or maybe when they eat their hamburgers, I learned this from a friend, when they eat their hamburgers, they take the bun off. They just eat the burger. That's the best part anyway, right? So look for that little pattern even among people you already know. There's always somebody healthier than other friends. Hopefully you have one friend that's healthy. When it comes to money, like in my family, one of my uncles was done really well with money. A relative. He had not made $1 billion. He wasn't even a millionaire. But when I was first starting out, he knew the most. And he got me started and helped me by giving me some advice. If you've heard my TED Talk, I talk about that uncle, my Uncle Bill. Right? He was savvy in the relative competence of those people I knew. He was very confident. And when it comes to, love, it's the same thing. When it comes to social circles, obviously there's always people that are better. Don't get caught up on that now. Remember, we talk about base hits. We're going to talk about that more in the 67 steps. Just move forward through time, continually getting closer to the goal. Outcome you want. There is no I'm there or I'm not. The end game goal is kind of like chasing a mirage. The closer you get to the horizon, the mirage moves further out. So don't worry about the end game goal. Just move about progressive momentum. So I don't care who you are, you will have a stratification among those people around you. Of course, you can use books. Look through your books of all the biographies you have sitting there. Who has a person that's the richest in the sense, not of money necessarily, although it could be money, but who's closest to the outcome you want? Read that book first. Get the rich friends there. Watch the YouTube videos. Begin to notice how they walk, how they talk, patterns. Some of them will surprise you. Some of them you won't like. Like I said, this one girl, she thought billionaires were all the most generous people in the world, but they're not, in my experience. They're not the stingiest, but they're not the... And that might surprise you. So the first thing is look for this relative competence. Start where you are. Joel Sutton used to tell me, bloom where you're planted. The second thing is I want you to avoid the trap of already knowing what you want the advice to be from the rich friends versus poor friends. You know, I was reading this at Jeff Bezos. I don't know where the book is right now, but I'll see if I can pull it up, this quote. And it was saying the thing that really struck them about Jeff Bezos is how much of a truth seeker he was. That he always sought out the truth. I'm going to find it hopefully here. So for you, my phone died. Great. I make these iPhones. They always need to be charged continually. But he said the two things that I learned about Jeff Bezos, the number one was that he sought out truth no matter what the outcome would be. Like when he launched the Kindle, the ebook reader, he knew he was killing his other main business that had made him, you know, was making billions in revenue, physical books. But he was a truth seeker. He said, if the truth is humans are going to want to move to books, electronic books, then I'm not afraid of the truth, and I want you to be the same. Some of these rich friend, poor friend lessons you're going to learn, they're not going to be what you want, but embrace the truth. They said about Jeff Bezos, the second thing that was so interesting, they said he was willing to buck conventions, the rules. They said the only thing he believed was set in stone was physics. Anything besides physics was up for grabs. So as you go out there, you're going to get shocked a little bit. It's not what you think. It's not what people put on their Facebook wall, the inspirational quotes. It's not that stuff that gets you the success you want. There's other things. There's a little bit of a dark side you might find. Oh my God, to get rich, people are pretty aggressive. Oh, I don't know if I like that. Well, that's fine. Embrace the truth, but maybe you adjust your course. If you can't handle that, maybe you just say, well, I'm not going to become a billionaire, but I'm going to become a millionaire. I'm just going to become financially independent. That's okay. There's no rule. Don't ever let someone fool you. There's just outcomes. So, but don't try to hide the rule and say, no, it doesn't take a method. It doesn't take any aggression to make money. No, it probably does. You might not like that truth. It might not match up with some of your old worldviews, but be like Jeff Bezos. Be the truth seeker. Truth seeker. You know, I'm not religious, but I quote from many different Dalai Lama and Buddha and Jesus Christ, Muhammad. I don't care who it is. Jesus Christ said, you know, I didn't come to bring peace. I came to bring a sword. I came to divide mothers from their children and fathers from their children and husbands from their wives. And he said, if you're not willing to do that, you're not worthy of me. And in that story, he represented the truth. So as you go for the truth, it might divide you. The same thing with I'm not a inspirational speaker. You know, you see me, I'm surrounded by books. Some of these books you won't agree with, some of them you will. I don't care. That's not the path that I'm on. I'm not a moralistic person. I don't believe I'm here to bring conventional morals or this or that or to teach this religion or that. That's not my thing. I am just going after what seems to be true as best as I can. Best I can. I make many mistakes on it. But if it divides old beliefs, if it's a sword that cuts my old beliefs off that I was so excited and I was so sure were true, so be it. Let the chips fall where they may fall. So I'm just warning you now, to get what you want out of this exercise of beginning to hone in on it, you're gonna be surprised. And some of the answers you're not gonna like, but I hope that you are a truth seeker, my friend. I hope that you care about the truth more than those things that make you feel good, more than those, of the 25 cognitive biases, one of the biggest is the certainty bias. We want to be certain of stuff. Think of all the things in the world and all the problems in life because people want to be certain. So those are kind of my 2 caveats. All right. So now I want you to do a very important step. I want you to write down right now on this page, first as a comment, because I like the social aspect, and then you're going to have your private journal too. Remember, there's always 2 things. The comment here that you do publicly, that also marks this lesson off so you can go to the next step. And then you can print off, we have a little worksheet here. You can print it off, put it in a 3-ring binder, and write it with a pen and paper. What is the thing, one example of a profound lesson you've learned with rich friends versus poor friends, or rich relative versus poor relative, a in-shape person versus an overweight acquaintance, a happily married versus an unhappily married, a fulfilled person versus an unfulfilled, a person who's great with romance and not great, a person who make $1 million and can never pay their bills. Write down one practical one. I told you some of mine. I have many more than we can put in this step. But what is yours? What is that one step that is yours? Okay? So leave that. I will check it. If you have any questions, you can direct message me. Remember, stay reliable. Don't fall off on this course. Keep going to the next one. 67 steps. I didn't make it 6. I wanted it to be a challenge because I want to rewire your brain. Sloth and unreliability will put you out of business in life. Be reliable. Go through this one and show up tomorrow for the next one, okay? I'm excited. You're getting closer to the goal. The rewiring is happening. You don't realize it's not because of me. It's University College London. This is how the brain, the neurobiology of our brain works, right? All right, so great. Thanks so much. Talk to you soon.